All right. Well, I am going to go ahead and get us started then so we can be mindful of everybody's time. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. My name is Sylvia Hernandez. I am the manager of Illinois recruitment for MSU, Michigan State University. I'm also one of the co-chairs of the ad hoc professional development committee. So I just have a brief few remarks, and then I'm going to turn it over to our facilitators to get started. And so I hope you guys enjoyed today. But again, good afternoon. Welcome to IACAC's Lunch and Learn series. Some of you may recall a few months ago, we surveyed membership and we were asking for feedback regarding professional development, especially in these times that we're having right now. But many of the topics that we're covering during this Lunch and Learn series came from that survey. Multiple responses indicated that our members wanted a more informal space to connect with each other and discuss some of the things that we face daily as admission and counseling professionals. So it's our hope that this series will do just that. Hopefully you guys are all ready for a great conversation. So just a few housekeeping details, and then again, I'll turn it over to our facilitators, Christian, Angie, and Jennifer. We ask that all participants be mindful that this is a professional space. We ask that you keep your conversations both focused on the questions under consideration and respectful of the experiences of other participants, especially as some of the topics may carry significant impact with colleagues. At the end of today's event, we will be sending out a quick survey. It's 4 questions, I promise. So please take a moment and fill this out to submit it, especially since this is our first time kind of hosting a series of this nature. And then finally, if you're not an IACAC member yet, of course, just a quick little plug. If you would like to become a member or renew your membership, we encourage you to visit our website, iacac.org, to learn more about all of the benefits of membership. So again, enjoy your Lunch and Learn series. Thank you for your participation. And I'm gonna turn it over to Angie Cooksey to get you guys started. So enjoy and have a great time.
Hi friends, thank you, Sylvia. I'm Angie Cooksey. I serve as Director of Freshman Admissions at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. Sylvia started this by saying it's a lunch and learn. I want to preface this by saying that Christian and Jennifer and I are no means experts on technology things. So we really hope that this is a lunch and converse. And so we want you to please be comfortable asking questions and continuing the dialogue today, because otherwise it's not going to be very exciting to listen to us. I'm sorry, I'm letting people in from the waiting room as we go. Please feel free to turn your videos on if you would like. I love seeing everybody's faces if you're comfortable with it. It is totally fine if you have not brushed your teeth yet today and you are still eating your lunch and hanging out. We get it. There is so much going on for everybody. Hi, Laura. See, so exciting. So we broke this down into 3 kind of topics that we thought were maybe things that were also on other people's minds. And so what we wanted to do today was spend maybe 15-ish minutes on each topic and really have that dialogue about that area. If it's bigger than that, then we can keep going. But we thought we'd start with these 3 areas. And so one is, how do we effectively engage students in virtual events and environments? And so like today, getting everybody engaged and making sure people feel connected. How are we doing that? Who has great tips? Who has great ideas? What are you doing? Best practices, things like that. Second topic, which I know I have been really worried about and thinking about, best practices for safety and security in a virtual space. And so not just for our students, but also for our staffs, making sure that everybody is practicing safe things so that nobody's put into an uncomfortable situation. And so again, best practices, have you set anything up in your offices? High school side counselors, have you done anything in your buildings that it's important for college counselors to know about? And then our third topic is really, how do we scale up these events? And so a number of colleges, they do their big events on those holidays, right? So the Columbus Days and the Veterans Days and the Memorial Days, and maybe not Memorial Day, but you know, you have one big visit program a year. How do we do a visit program like that in this virtual space for those high school students? How do we make sure they're getting the information that we want them to do and share the experience of our campuses on a computer? And so those are kind of the 3 topic areas that we had thought about today as we put together our sort of agenda. If If you have other topic areas that you were like, hey, I really came here to hear about this and talk about this, please pop it in the chat. We are watching the chat, and it's, we want to make sure that the dialogue is there. So Christian, do you want to start by sort of taking virtual events and leading us off there?
Sure. So thank you all for being here with us today. There's so many people here, so this is really exciting to have such well attendance. I think too, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Angie, did you tell us where you're from?
I did. I'm from Bradley.
Okay. Awesome. So she's from Bradley. Again, my name is Christian Brown. I'm one of the assistant directors at Augustana College based out of Chicago. So I'm actually a Chicago-based regional and work on the team. And then we have our third moderator here with us today, Jennifer, or Jen. You go by Jen. Do you want to introduce yourself before we get started as well?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Phillips. I am the Associate Director for Freshman Recruitment at SIU Carbondale. So glad to see all of these wonderful faces on today. I cannot believe we have 105 participants. That's awesome. So welcome.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So we'll go ahead and get started in our first set of discussion, or our first question topic. One of the things too, I'll just make a note. I know this has been said a couple of times, but we all know that I'm using hashtag P word, pandemic, right? We're all in pandemic. We're all at home. We all got kids, animals, cats, all kind of things. So you might have to scream at any of those things at some point. Totally understand. Just make sure you're on mute. Okay. So if you don't want us to hear anything going on, make sure you're on mute. Check often. If you want to respond in voice, you're totally able to do that. You have the ability to unmute. If you don't feel comfortable with that, please utilize the chat box. So our first question is, how do we effectively engage students in virtual events? One of the things I might think to maybe start this conversation is to maybe drop into the chat box something that was an epic fail in regards to a virtual event. We've all had those hashtag bombed it, failed it moments. So if you've had any of those experiences, feel free to drop those into the chat box. But we'd love to hear any feedback about folks who've either had some really great experiences with this so far, maybe someone who has a specific question in regards to virtual events. So we'll give it a few minutes. Jen, Angie, and I do not plan on providing you all of the insight today, if any, really. So feel free to start talking. We will wait on you to reply. Anyone? Will there be one?
I feel like we should say Bueller.
Well, I feel like, so maybe this is a good example of just being willing to do something, right? I think that has been Bradley's challenge as we've started this whole thing. Obviously we're in a different place now than we were back in March, but I remember being in March and it just being oh my goodness, nothing we normally do is now going to work. How do we do this? And then there's at least for us, there was that sense of a little bit of panic. What do we even do? And so I think just this, just trying something. So we're getting a couple private messages in, the power of Kahoot. I would love to hear more about who is using Kahoot and what that success is looking like. So I don't want to mispronounce your name, Gaelyn Rose, is that right?
Yep, I'm sorry, I'm also swallowing my lunch.
Oh, perfect.
Hi, I'm Gaelyn. I'm at Lawrence University. I didn't do my hair because I wasn't going to turn my video on, but sorry about that. So I was doing College Horizons, if anyone's ever done that program before, where we're assigned small groups of students of about 15, and it's this very emotionally invested program, and you're having to get these students to connect and talk with each other. But it was very difficult to do when they're not in the same space and they don't know each other. And it was very similar to the issues we were having with trying to bring our incoming class together virtually. And so we started out every single one of our meetings together with some sort of game. So Kahoots, if you haven't used it before, is just a really easy online, they have a bunch of pre-made games, or you could make your own about your university with fun facts, and they compete with each other. But it was just a really simple way to do something fun and engaging. And I don't know why 17-year-olds love it, but they do. And I mean, we've tried all kinds of different games since then, and they've been really great. Everything from 2 truths and a lie to basically anything you did as a camp counselor. Just sort of bringing all of those back to get them started, because if we don't give them a game to get started, we find that they won't talk to each other.
So Gaelyn, have you is that something that students have to like download? I think for anybody who hasn't used that before, can you give people a little bit of like behind the scenes setup and background, and how much work is that in the prep phase?
Absolutely. I should say I'm actually pretty bad at technology. I realize I also look 17, but it is just a website. I just Google the word cahoots. I don't even know what the website is. And students will be able to basically click a link and put in their name, or you can assign them like funny aliases. And it can be done on a computer or a phone, anything that has internet connection. And so it's been relatively accessible with the communities that we've been working with, unless they are like driving at the time or things like that. But it has been pretty accessible and very, very easy for students to use. Many of them have used it in their high school, it seemed like, as well. And they seemed pretty familiar with it.
Awesome. Laura West said that she's had some success using Zoom polls. So Laura, would you like to share some of that success or what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do that. This was something we didn't use in an admissions context. It was actually a workshop through our summer research program, but it was just helpful to engage students. Some of them were hesitant to unmute themselves, or some of them did participate through chat, but it was just a good way that you can send out polls to get like a temperature of the room, and then you can share those polls to everyone in the Zoom meeting. And so that's a good way to keep their engagement and just kind of show, what's going on in the group that joined you. So, what stage they're at in terms of, or what questions they most have with, it might be for like an admitted student event, or if they're in the application process, you could certainly use polls for that and just ask about, what questions do you still have now? What are some of the things that you still have to do as your next steps, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Kathryn McAuley, you had mentioned that you see students appreciate knowing what they're going to expect and having an agenda prior. So can you talk a little bit about, are you sending that out in a confirmation email? Like, what does that look like, and what kind of success are you having there?
So I apologize in advance. I'm with my 3 little ones, but so there might be some background noise. So we unsuccessfully had, at first, unsuccessfully advisory lessons for our high school students. And we were having, like 2 or 3 students join out of 30. And so we, brainstormed and tried some different things. And we found that when we sent out the agendas to the advisory students, so like a group of 30 students in each advisory or so, and said, the topic today is going to be, like stress management. And here are the 3 coping skills we're going to cover. And here are the 3 main questions we're going to discuss. It gave them time prior to the lesson to think about the ways that they would contribute to the session. And so we found that doing that, students were more likely to join. So after that, we had probably 17 or 18 students.
Kristen, it looked like you were going to say something. I think that transitions well into, somebody had a comment. Where did it go? Alina Lanas. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering anybody's name, so please correct me. You had mentioned that struggling with students to participate in virtual events when students are already completely overwhelmed. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that is totally even my life right now. It is meeting from meeting to meeting to meeting. I had a meeting with Laura this morning, and then I left that meeting to go to another meeting, and then somebody was like, you're in my meeting because I'm supposed to be in that meeting. So how do you guys find that we can support our students in a way that gets them the information that they need from the colleges, but also doesn't take away from what they're doing in the high schools and is supporting kind of that mental health and that just making sure that they're doing okay. So is anybody having those conversations? Where is everybody with that? We're all just worried about it.
Well, I'll chime in.
Yeah.
Say, so that's something that we've been thinking a lot in our kind of the way we do outreach. I think something that we've not had to think about a lot in the past that we are now is thinking about, resiliency for students, not just once they're on campus, but them really being concerned about it before they get to campus, and that being kind of like a real big factor, just as they would consider other kind of traditional things for looking at different institutions and things for admissions. We've basically really had to, and I don't know how you all feel about this too, is partnerships in these virtual events across campus, thinking about how this can't just be an admissions thing necessarily. There has to be a ton of buy-in. Would love to hear how you all are getting buy-in, because as we all have been instructed by faculty members and work with faculty members, it could be a thing. So just really thinking about, really expressing the importance of things of that nature, and having to show those offices like our student resiliency office, why it's important for you to be a part of the process earlier. We found a lot of success in that, and actually have gotten a lot of requests for that to be kind of on a menu of presentations that are being provided virtually. So would love to hear some different aspects of how we're going about that virtual presentation, and a topic that can be, really sensitive, and doing it in a way that is meaningful and thoughtful. So yeah, so that is something, at least on our end, that we've been thinking about, Angie.
Well, I think that idea of like combining resources, right, is something I've seen a lot on like the Facebook chat groups and things like that, about like, can you partner with another institution, or can high schools partner together? I know I have a small-ish territory. Some of you are laughing at me. And a number of my high schools are like, this district is doing all of their visits together. And so that kind of alleviates the oh, you're getting so many different things and all of that. So it looks like, okay, Robin's saying that Maine 207 are combining and doing them outside of the school day. So that's another thing that I'm seeing, is that some of them are going to be outside the school day. I worry about that for our staffing purposes. Is like, I've seen some of those outside the school day ones are going to like 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, which I think can kind of transition into the conversation of like best practices for safety and security, because I just have some concerns there. But what are you guys seeing on those types of things? Robin says they're not going there that late. So,
we did. Yeah,
what?
I was about to say, maybe we can switch. There were actually a couple of questions that came in. So maybe we can ask these to the group. And I didn't see any answers in the chat necessarily yet. But Lisa says, I have a question regarding capturing student info. So pre-COVID, when we would meet with students at college fairs or through classroom visits, we would have the students physically fill out a lead card. Oh, dear Lord have mercy. Yeah, I know this is a thing. So what are reps using now? I don't have an answer for you, Lisa. I hope somebody has an answer for all like 126 of us.
So this is literally what Laura and I were meeting about this morning. So I'm gonna preface this by saying that somebody else probably has a better way to do this, but this is what I have figured out so far. And we are a slate school at Bradley, so that impacts where we're coming from. But in rep visits or SCORE, I don't have as much familiarity with Maya. I'm still trying to delve into that. We don't have a ton of schools yet on that, but that's another platform that's out there. When it asks for your virtual visit link, it just asks for a URL. It doesn't necessarily ask that it's a Zoom link or a Google Meet link or something like that. So if you have a virtual or a digital prospect card that you can put there as the link, then that's how you can register students for that event, and that you can capture that information on the front end. I think as colleges, we've traditionally kind of captured it on the back end, because we're in there meeting with the students and we pass out our information and then we collect it all. So this sort of flips that idea a little bit backwards. But the nice part about that is, so when I have a student that registers to meet with me, I will see like, oh, X student registered. Then when we send their confirmation, we send the Zoom link in the confirmation. So our Zoom link just isn't like out there in the world. And another thing on safety security, like we don't necessarily want our Zoom links just out there in the world, right? Like we want to kind of be able to hold on to those a little bit. So we're having students, like when I send it to the high school, it is our registration form. They register for the event. They're self-selecting into that. So there's not like an issue about anybody sharing data or information. Like the students are self-selecting into those visits. They fill that card out. And then when they fill that virtual visit card out, then we're sending them the Zoom link and the confirmation for them to get into the meeting. So that's how we've kind of worked through that for us. But somebody might have a better version.
Angie, I was going to ask too, and I guess we have to remember to do this. It sounds like maybe someone asked what might a slate form be, because there was a question mark after that. So could you explain what the slate form is in slate? I mean, I guess it's like a simple thing, but just.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, honestly, it's just like the registration form that you all would have filled out to have this event. So similarly to being able to get the login to today, you said, hey, IACAC is doing an event. I'm interested in that event. So I'm going to register and put my name and my email address. And then IACAC said, hey, you registered. Here's the information to get into this event today. And so when I say slate form, it's just, that's our CRM. If you have a different CRM, your form might be called something different. But it's literally just the registration form that's built into our system.
I think that's a great idea. And something else that we've seen with virtual events and collecting the information on the front end is really important, because what we have found is, just like probably with this event, we've seen that our virtual registration has been probably inflated in relation to our attendance rates. So we're not seeing as high of attendance rates because, kind of like this virtual event, you can sign up for it, and then if something else supersedes your ability to be able to attend, it's kind of like, that's no big deal, I didn't pay for it. But at least we're able to capture that student information, even if we don't mark them as being attended at the event, we at least have that information and that data to go off of to build, our pipeline.
And I am like a glass half full, positive Patty kind of person. And so the way that I see that is, how many times on the college counselor visit have you walked in and your high school counselor or your school counselor is like, we have 12 kids registered today, and then 4 of them come and they're like, well, there were 12 kids registered, and you're like, oh gosh, like I wish I knew who those other, how much is that? 8 were. It was a communications major, math is not my thing. But so now if you have 12 students register for your event, you know who those 8 were that didn't sign up, and now you have that ability, like you were saying, Jen, to be able to like follow up, send them the information. I think this is a really good pivot into talking about recording visits. As I've been setting up visits, I know a lot of my school counselors have said, hey, we want you to record this. Where's everybody at on that? We are not recording visits. We have decided to do something else, but I'd love to hear what other schools feel like or what other schools are doing.
Hey, Angie.
Yeah,
It's
Lisa.
Hi. So just getting back to the topic that we were previously discussing, I'll reach out to you and I'll email you just so we don't have to take up too much time here. I'm new to Slate. Slate is our CRM, but brand new to it. And I understand what you're saying, but I'll just send you an email regarding rep visits because I know a little bit about it and the link and all that. But what you just said regarding recorded visits kind of links into the second part of my question. What we discovered and what I used late spring when we first went into the pandemic, like roughly in April, is I sent some of my teachers a recorded Zoom presentation that I did. So it was not using rep visits. It wasn't any other platform outside of me sending them a link to their Google, through my Google Drive. What we did is and this might be helpful to others, is I created in my PowerPoint presentation a slide with a QR code to our request information Google link. And all the kids had to do was hold up their phone, and all phones using their camera can scan that link and it takes them to that information and they can fill it out on their phone. Now, I don't know if there's any legal privacy issues with that, but the teachers I sent it to didn't have any problems with it. But it was just a way for them to fill it out when you're not using a platform like rep visits and you're just on your own, you know, trying to present in the classroom. My school does things a little differently than most of the universities probably with us today. We don't do a ton of guidance and college fairs. We do hundreds of classroom presentations a year. So my concern is more about how do I get into this virtual classroom now? And that was just kind of a way that we found that kind of worked. I mean, it probably needs a little tweaking, but it did work. I mean, kids were able to access our link through a QR code.
Yeah, I know a couple other people have QR codes. That is a world that I know nothing about. Like, it's real. You guys, I think it's so funny that I am even like on this panel because technology is so not my jam, and I just am like trial and error on things. But I know other places are using the QR codes, and it seems like, and school counselors, I think it'd be great to hear from any of you, but it seems like the students are very familiar with that, and they seem totally fine with the QR code technology. I think that's a big shift because even 5 years ago, like 5 years ago, QR codes were really hot and no one knew how to do them. And so then they kind of went away, but now I feel like they're sort of back. Is that other people feeling similarly? Lots of head nodding.
If you go to a restaurant, you almost have to have a smartphone in order to QR code their menu. So I'm assuming that a lot of places are using it.
You guys, so we have Hulu at my house, and yesterday, like, there was an advertisement for something and a QR code popped up with my husband's email address. Like, the TV knew our life with it was crazy, you guys, like bananas. So they're all the places. Anyone else doing QR codes? Laura, I know you guys, you guys are doing QR codes.
Yeah, I was going to chime in. So we used a QR code, but we also have a link. So I've done one high school visit, and I treated it more like a presentation than like an actual high school visit, which is not my preference. But that's what we did. And so we actually embedded a link as well, because I had students say, I don't have my phone with me. And so then they could either just click on the link in that presentation or use their phone for the QR code. And it brought them to a form. It was a little bit more work for me on the back end, just because of how we had it configured and tying the attendees to the actual event and slate. So that's the system we're using right now. We'll see how it goes, but yeah.
So it looks like there's okay, so yeah, Amelia's saying having a link in addition to the QR code is very helpful for students who don't own cell phones or smartphones. So definitely good for us all to remember as we think about access and making sure that every student has the ability to get into those presentations. It looks like a lot of comments coming through about recording presentations, presentation style versus individual meetings, whether you're doing a virtual visit series, kind of what that looks like. Christian, do you want to talk about, or Jen, do you guys want to talk about what you guys are doing specifically?
Yeah, as far as, let me make sure I'm getting on track because I'm like reading through all this stuff over here. So thinking about just like recordings versus just what we're doing. So we've been trying to really, first of all, I don't know how y'all feel, but I just feel like we are almost doing too many things. But I think it's out of everyone trying to figure out where we're going to get leads, how we're going to get those connections, right? So I don't think we can get around it, but it still feels overwhelming, and I'm okay to say that out loud. But with that being said, I think, right, this is a safe space. I hope it's a safe space. But on the flip side of that, I think one of the things that we tried to do to really, I don't know, find some uniqueness in how we're presented is having to really come to terms with, the way we traditionally present is presenting on our institutions if you're on the college side. I think on the high school side, making sure that students get all of that institutional information they need about all the folks that we partner with on a day-to-day basis. I think what we're trying to shift into is how can we just be a resource, not necessarily an institutional resource, but a resource for higher education. I think thinking about, students are not seeing their counselors. Some of them haven't seen counselors since like February, which is like nuts to think about, and won't see them the rest of this fall probably. And so trying to serve in that space, I think that has been really helpful for us to say, we're here as a college admissions resource, right? So we started doing something we're calling Summer Search Series, which is basically like these presentations about just college topics, financial aid, all these other things. And I think we've gotten really probably more interest in those than we have even in our one-on-one stuff, some of the high school things that we've done, or CBO presentations. I think trying to really change the mindset of how we traditionally have recruited and have those virtual events not just be so centered around admissions information. That's been really helpful on our campus. Again, ours is kind of, I guess, basic to start off with, right? All the topics you would talk about on a panel if you're not talking just about your institution, but thinking about what else can we do and can we offer to students as a supplement to kind of what they may be missing during the fall. Would love to hear if there are any supplemental things you all have been able to offer, either on the college side or the high school side, if there are things that you're looking for that we as college folks don't even think about in regards to virtual programming. I think having to think of ways to say, how can we make this a virtual program, whether we just can't make this a virtual program, is, you know, going to be helpful, because boom, this is what we're doing all the fall. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think it's so cool that, like, I don't know about you guys, but like, we also, yes, we're all completely overwhelmed and we all have a million things going on and there's all sorts of over programming happening. But again, this is like my glass half full side of things. Like, there's so many opportunities now to do things we never had time or capacity to do in the past. And so all of those things, like, I would say, like, challenge your staffs to think about, like, hey, those things that we've always talked about that we just haven't been able to move up, like, if we don't have to go anywhere and you have a passion about whatever, like, let's develop it as a virtual event and be able to put it out. It doesn't cost anything to put you out onto a virtual program. I know we've been doing we did some stuff all in Spanish this year, which is something we've really wanted to do, but we just haven't been able to move forward. And we've been doing some Spanish programming. And we have been doing some more first generation stuff and things like that, where, you know, we've always done it, but I don't know that we've done it in a way that we've been able to kind of share it. And that I think is something that's the coolest thing. Yes, we're all completely overwhelmed, but, like, I just have to find, like, the light in it, because it can be really exciting, I think.
So I have a quick question. So when we say virtual, is everybody kind of referring to more of a live like we are right now, or are people doing more like recorded so that they're more on demand?
I think that's a good question. We're doing both.
Mm-hmm.
Same. We are too. Be interested to hear what other folks are doing. I know just like before this meeting, I had a meeting with our social media communications team, and they were really trying to explain the difference between, like, what we think about as live can be, like, less as live and maybe in real time was the term I learned today. And it was a great conversation to think about, you know, how can we keep a quality conversation? Students are saying the things we like for them to say in an authentic way, and are prepared to say that. But like you said, Jen, do they have to be live, right? How do we have to do things to accommodate time and schedules? And so that's a good point.
Oh, you're muted.
And when we think about doing these kinds of things, one of the things that we also kind of run into is just how polished do these need to look when we're putting them out there? Because I know that, like, our university communications is very overwhelmed. I mean, we're moving to a virtual world. And so being able to get, like, videos produced and things of that nature can be really challenging. And we all know that our best ability is our availability and being able to have things quickly. And so sometimes just being able to run into, you know, is doing it on our iPhone and recording it, is that okay? And then putting it out there, or does it need to look like this polished video that we're going to, you know, have on our website, you know, forever?
One of the things we did, which we found worked really well this year, and especially because everyone's in Zoom and everybody is kind of used to this format, we've done some, like, student panels and things where we had the students do a recording, and it looked like it was live, but they had done it previously. So now we just had the file, and then we embedded that file into our presentation. And so then we're like, we're going to throw it to the students. And then we didn't need all the students to be available right during that live presentation. We didn't have to worry about a bunch of connectivity or things like that. Like, they did it on their own. And then we were able to just save that recording and embed it into presentations. And so I think that, I don't know about you guys, but I think that students in general feel very forgiving on the perfection. They want authentic material. They want to see, and I get it, like, there are VPs and deans and directors out there that are going to have a heart attack with me saying these things, but, like, they want to know what your campus is and who you are. And so I feel like maybe as a profession, we can say, this is the time where we move away from that, like, suit and tie and really stuffiness, and just, like, present our institutions as who we are and show the fun stuff and show the quirky things and show the people behind this work, because these students are overwhelmed enough, and they want, like, I don't know, I feel like they want to know that somebody's in their corner and somebody's cheering them on, and like presenting something that's perfect. I don't feel like they buy into that. Maybe it's just me. Anybody else?
I would agree. I'm all for the more kind of organic, homegrown kind of productions. I mean, the slick ones that, you know, the university communications and things like that put out are lovely. But I think in the instance of time and in the population that we're reaching, I think that I'm all for using the technology that we have right here at our fingertips.
Yeah, and I would say too, I love, Sheila mentioned that they're using students, I think it says, as live paid admissions hosts for these events. I know in our office, that's been kind of like a question of back and forth. You know, when Angie, for instance, is referring to those hours that may potentially be worked in the fall, you know, a 17, 19, 20-year-old is probably going to be okay with the 9 p.m. more than my body will be, right? So thinking about how can we utilize them in a way that's a best practice and, you know, really does communicate what we're trying to communicate, but is creative. And so I think thinking about that student perspective of them actually being able to lead some of these programmings that we have on campus is something that we've even thought about. I don't know if we've been, you know, bold enough to jump in that pool yet, but definitely something to think about. So it's nice to hear that that's come up. Gonna see, I feel like maybe
There's like a lot of questions.
So many questions, which is wonderful. And yeah. I wonder if we think about jumping into actually maybe we ask. So we have these questions. Do you all want to continue with these questions and kind of get these answers about safety and security in virtual spaces, or do we want to just like bypass that and maybe continue on with this conversation? I'm gonna let y'all give some yes, some no's, some maybes in the chat box, because we want to make sure we get to things if we need to, but we can also totally stay on this conversation if this is most useful.
All right, let's do, if you have the reactions thing below on your Zoom thing, if you would like to stay on this conversation, give us a clap emoji thing, reaction. Anybody?
Can everybody find them? Reaction, smiley face. We got
a couple claps. If you would like to move on to another topic, give us the thumbs up. 1. All right, I am seeing more thumbs up than claps, so I think we're gonna move on.
Okay, and you can absolutely download this chat feature before, so we'll make sure we stay on long enough for folks to do that, to get at least the questions and information and things in there, since we're gonna move on. So we'll make sure we can do that. So, Jen, do you want to move us to the second discussion?
We may have lost her because of school pickup.
Oh yeah, Jen has like
because it's real life.
Life happened. Her kid had to leave school because you can't leave a kid at school. So, okay, well, I'll jump us into the second question, which is best practices for safety and security in virtual spaces. I feel very, very, very strongly about this as someone who within the first week of this whole virtual platform stuff got probably Zoom bombed like 3 times that week. It was very offensive. It was very rattling. It was just like, I can't do this. I'm about to quit. But I didn't, obviously. I love my job. So, but, you know, it really posed a lot of, this is a real thing. You know, higher education is focused quite a bit on, you know, being an inclusive space, being a space where students feel like they can be themselves and communicate things. And so, you know, we had students in that space and it sucked. And I was like, oh, dang, nobody's going to think about Augustana after this. Surprisingly, the students were probably less offended than us Augie folks were. We were literally like devastated for a whole day. We got it together. But really thinking about those best practices and things. So I don't know if there are any questions that are just like at top of mind about security, doing things, you know, the right way, thinking about policies on the high school side, thinking about policies on the college side, what those might be. Angie, I don't know, do you have anything that maybe, I know you had mentioned something a while back in our conversations about security and things like that, so I couldn't think of what that was.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my brain just works like all of the time and then just thinks of random things and then just says them, which sometimes gets me in trouble. But when I started thinking about safety and security and I started thinking about some of the things that we are doing, it came from One of the presentations that I sat in from a college representative where that person was in their bedroom and you could see their bed in the background. And I get it. We all live in different spaces. Some of us have like studio apartments or one bedroom places. But it just got me thinking of, as we are meeting with high school students and minors, where is the line here? The other place that then continued the thought in my head is I was watching some of the presentations and the students are like popping on from their iPhone, like in their bed. And I was like, okay, as an institution, as a field, are we having these conversations? And I hadn't been part of those conversations with anybody else yet. And so then I was kind of like, when Christian and I were talking, and pretty much like anybody that I talked to, I'm like, is anybody else thinking about these things? Because we've never been here before, right? Like when we have had visits with students in the past, they've been in very secured areas. I would go into a high school where there is an open space, or there is a guidance counselor, a school counselor, or a high school representative there. A student might come to visit my institution in a space where there is a parent or there is another representative or somebody else is there. And I just started wondering, as we go into this virtual space where there is no actual space, are there boundaries we should think about as professionals about where we should draw some lines? It doesn't necessarily have to be like a hard and fast, but like, are there things that just maybe are good best practices? Like I was telling my staff, like, I don't think evening things that are late past 7 p.m. really feel necessary. You can find another time with your students to meet and have a phone call or things like that. Like I just don't, something feels weird to me about an 8 p.m. Zoom call with a student. I don't know, maybe it's just me. And you know, we want to be flexible, but also being secure. You know, I was telling my team, like, you know, if we're going to have these evening one-on-one appointments, like it's probably really a good call to say, hey, when you confirm that, like, let's make sure you have a parent or a guardian or somebody else in there with us. Like, let's not have these necessarily maybe need to be just an adult and a student. So, you know, I'm just thinking about things in that area. I don't know if anybody else is thinking or has thoughts about any of that. But those are some of the things that have kind of been on my mind as far as safety and security, both protecting the institution and the professionals that we all are, but also the students, because they're minors and they don't know any different, right? Like they just do things.
Yeah, and
I know in the chat coming through.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, I know they're quite upset.
Now everybody's like brain is turning. They're like, ah.
Right.
Okay, so Robin says at Maine, a staff member will be on all virtual Zoom visits. So I think that's a nice policy on the high school side. I hate saying side. I'm really sorry. We have to think of a better word. Like there's got to be better language. Okay. Oh, so University of Michigan is doing Zoom backgrounds so that the background is more generic. So I love that. I was telling Laura today, or no, I was telling somebody in my set, like, I hate my backgrounds in my like real office space. Like this is not, like my couch is not centered, like the actual living of my space is not very conducive, but it looks really pretty on Zoom. So like that is how I feel like I'm living my life these days. My camera doesn't like the Zoom backgrounds, but I think the Zoom backgrounds are super nice if you have them that work. So that's a really good one. Somebody else said a rule of 3. Oh, I like that terminology. If they're unable to coordinate with a parent, we both turn cameras off for a more phone type conversation. And okay, I love that so much because I feel like we are now all defaulting to video, but our phones still work. Like, we could still call each other. Anybody else? I think those are really good. I love that rule of 3 policy. Megan, thank you for sharing that. Do you have anything else to add on that, Megan? Put you on the spot.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I don't have any more details to kind of add, but it has been a really important conversation that's evolved throughout the summer. And just kind of getting the answers from the university can be a difficult kind of experience for us too, because nobody knows what the right direction to take is. So I think if we, as kind of the ones that are engaging so often, to be able to propose ideas throughout our admissions office and then to see where that can go, I think that can be a good place to start. But we have definitely implemented the Rule 3. I was even doing that before the university came out, because it's really awkward when it's just you and a student on camera and maybe the internet's difficult or they don't have any questions all of a sudden for some reason. That's such a different experience than being in person with them and trying to get the questions out of them. I would encourage thinking about those policies.
That's awesome. And I would also too, that brings up a really good point. Megan, I completely agree. Secondly, Sean, you make a really interesting point about we've never recorded phone calls. I'm like, oh yeah, duh, that's a good point, right? That could have definitely went awry too with some students, but we've never thought to do that. I would be interested to know if you are an institution or a high school that's requiring the recording of, and I probably more for my question would be on the college side, if you're requiring that, where are you keeping these recordings? Like where the heck does that all go? I maybe you can say somewhere Slate School, so I don't even know if that can go in Slate. I don't know where do these things get saved. So if you know, I'd be interested to know. Feel free to chime in. But that's something that just kind of came to mind as well. Let's see.
So Christian, our presentations that we're recording, so like when similar to you guys doing like that search series, we're doing something along the same lines. I think a lot of places are. We are recording all of those to, I don't know what we're gonna do with them, but just to have them. I've been pulling them off of our Zoom cloud because we only have so much storage and none of us have any dollars. So we're good. I'm pulling them off our Zoom cloud and then I'm just setting them up and as a Google file in our Google Cloud and kind of just storing them there. And then you can give people just view only access. So if I have a student that I have an email today where a student's like, I couldn't attend this one, can I have it? And then we can just send them that Google link. I think there's a better way to do it. I think there's a way we could get onto the university YouTube platform or things like that. I already told you all, I'm not very tech savvy and that requires a lot of other people to be able to do things that sometimes I just do things and ask for forgiveness later. I don't recommend that as a life policy, but that's my jam. And so Google, I think, allows kind of you to have a little bit more of that flexibility just to store things. And then I know somebody was asking about recording the high school visits. Like I said, we're not doing that. All of our counselors are doing an individual recording of a generic high school presentation that they would give. And then if their high school is like, hey, we'd like it recorded, they're sending that versus the actual recording of the meeting. And then somebody else says Google Meets automatically creates a folder. Oh, okay, so creates a folder to archive videos. So if you're using Google Meets, Linda, do you know if there's a space limitation on that?
Yeah.
Knowledge. As far as I know, it just kind of throws everything into a folder, and I think my Google Drive, to my knowledge, there's no limit on that.
Awesome.
That's still more than some of us knew, so that's still good to know. Not as limited. Right? Another thing I found out, and just talking to Erin Hoover, who is our amazing communication social media person for ISAC, she mentioned to me yesterday that you can actually only give access to certain people to certain YouTube channels. I did not realize that was a thing. Right, I know, mind blown. That is literally how I felt yesterday. So I know that sometimes our YouTube channels are managed by, larger entities on campus, but it is kind of cool to know that you can give a certain subset of folks, students, whoever, parents, whoever they are, access to certain YouTube recordings and things of that nature. So that's all I know. So if you have any further questions, I'm not able to answer them for you. But, I'll
ask my 9-year-old. He spends a lot of time on YouTube. So maybe he can help us out.
So ask Angie's 9-year-old. We'll be able to follow up. But I did learn that yesterday. So that might even be something for us to, in our professions to start utilizing too, as we think about how to, be creative in the ways that we're offering things virtually.
So Sheila just asked a question about my comments that counselors are recording it. We are actually having each counselor do their own recording. And so those are actually on my calendar to get set up with our team this week. That's just kind of the way that we handle things. We certainly still have like a face of Bradley. Virtually lately, it has been my face, but I don't want my face to be everybody's thing. And so if a counselor that I work with at, Stevenson would like to see a virtual visit with us, then they would get my video. But if Sarah Doherty had a counselor at, Naperville North who wanted a virtual recording, they would get Sarah's video. And so that the students still have that connection with the counselor that they would work with from Bradley. So that's just the way we're doing it. We do have like a generic Bradley presentation that our Associate VP of Marketing does that's on our website. So we could use that. We just thought it was a little bit more personal to do the counselor version, the counselor route, but we'll see how it goes. All right, Christian, should we move to our last topic since we're like 15 minutes?
Okay. So sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Boom. Okay, so our last topic for today is how do we scale up virtual and in-person within social distancing guidelines, because we're not all trying to be sick, that's for sure, and admissions events. So how do we make these virtual events not just another Zoom or another Google Meet that lasts for 2.5 hours that we all fall asleep on at the end? Love to hear your suggestions. I think for our office, we started to very quickly learn that just putting what we do in person in a virtual platform does not cut it. You cannot put a 4 or 5 hour program into a virtual space and just run it the same way or for that same time. Really should never be 5 hours ever. Nothing should on Zoom. So thinking about, what are some things maybe your institutions have done to scale up? I am going to call out Bradley because I saw that wonderful Under the Stars thing that you all did. Felt real jealous, but super impressed. So it looked awesome. Hoping that there, are things that other campuses are doing. Maybe even high schools are getting creative with how you're connecting with your high school counselor, not your high school counselor, your high school students, to do things that are maybe sort of in person, but again, still within those social distancing guidelines. So yeah, I don't know if Angie, you want to think about how you kind of came up to that, how you all as an office came to that style of event, and what might have went into that while we get some feedback from our participants.
Sure. So I think I'd like to start by saying something I said at the beginning, which is just be willing to try things, and know that everything you do is going to have a million contingency plans and backup things and things you didn't expect, but just being willing to do things. I know. So the event Christian was speaking to is on Friday. We hosted an in-person program on our campus with real life human beings, which is the first one we've done since March. It is the first thing we have done we've done individual small, students could come and do a one-on-one tour, but we have not done a huge program since March. And there's a lot of legwork that goes into doing a socially distanced program. If you have questions about what we specifically did, I'm happy to speak with you about it. I don't want to go into all of the things because not relative to everybody. But even whether you are working in a high school or whether you're working in a college, I think that if you start with safety and security and putting students at the forefront and the health and wellness of your students and your staff at the forefront of what you do, and you create your program around that, there are ways that we can be creative to do good work. And I think when we just try to say well, this is what we've always done and now this isn't going to work, so we're not going to do anything, I don't know that that's doing a good service to anyone, because now nothing's happening. And so it does require kind of that level of let's see how it goes. And so, okay, Laura West is asking some of the precautions that we took. So we have a huge quad on campus. A lot of people have some sort of large grassy space. So if you look on the Bradley admissions website, you can see some pictures. It's behind our alumni center. So it's kind of like a traditional looking building, for lack of a better word. We made 8 by 8 squares. So our wonderful grounds crew out there with the chalk line, like baseball thing, physically measured out 8x8 squares that were then 6 feet apart. And so we had rows of those, and then we put 2 chairs in every box. And then we put families' individual names on their chair. And so it was very clear that like this space is for the Jones family and nobody but the Jones family is in this space. And then we required masks. I think that's been something that we have been really pleasantly surprised by at Bradley this summer. We've just said that masks are required. If you're on campus, a mask is required, and families have been gracious and very like, they just get it and they're like, okay. And they came and they had their mask. I think we've had 2 families all summer that needed a mask that we had to give them. Like they just are bringing them. They've been very just like, okay, we're so glad to be doing something. Then tour guides took out families like individually. So like one family would go with one tour guide. There were a couple tour guides that took 2 families out. But there were no more than 4 people with a tour guide. And they would do a tour of campus. And then they would come back to their square, and then they saw a presentation, and we ran a student panel, and then they all went home. And was it exactly the same as everything we've always done? Nope. But people really, really liked it. Do I imagine that we will be doing more? Probably. Does that mean I have to work till 9 p.m. a bunch of nights? Yes. But again, it's about being like inventive. The other thing kind of on a digital space, talking about like, you throw things at the wall and see if they stick. In April, we did a virtual activities fair where we had like 40 student organizations and representatives from 40 student organizations. And then all of our high school students could join the Zoom. So it was like this Zoom, and they would be like, Christian would say, I want to go talk to the activities council. And I would send her off to the activities council, and she would sort of like college fair, like they would talk to the activities council for a few minutes. And she would come back to the main room and she'd like, now I want to talk to Greek life. And I'd send her off to Greek life. It was insanity to do, but it was so fun. I mean, the kids loved being able to like pop in and out and get their question answered and come back and go see somebody else. It was not a huge formal presentation. It was super, super casual. It was run by our students. And it's just one of those things where it's like, try it out, see what happens. I was very sweaty during it because I was like, where do you gotta go? Oh, you're back. Where do you gotta go? But it was a good energy. And I think that the coolest thing that I have found when we've done any of these programs is that students are really forgiving. Like they are just like, all right, like we're gonna try it and see what happens. And they've been really gracious. And so I say, if you're doing anything, like don't be afraid, because you know, they're super flexible. That's all I got.
I would say, so Karen is asking about if there's any of this still listed on your website. I tried to look up the event, but obviously it's over, so it's not like a registration thing that's available. Rachel Gustafson, there she goes. Awesome. Okay, never mind. I feel like somebody found it. So JK, there we go. Also, I was going to mention too, this is something that's come up, and I'm probably like the one in our office who thinks about this stuff most often, but thinking about like, you know, eventually we'll probably all be trying to move into some type of in-person, whether it's a smaller thing. It's most likely always going to be a social distance situation, right, for the near future. But thinking about too, preparing your staff for, you know, those situations where maybe a family isn't as receiving to, you need to wear a mask, you need to do sort of things. And so I would be interested to hear, one of the things in our office we've been kind of exploring is, I don't know if de-escalation training is even the right term for those type of event settings, but thinking about communication training on how do you handle, you know, a family who maybe doesn't have these similar views of, I need to protect others, I need to whatever. I don't know if any of your offices are thinking in that way, but that's something that's kind of come up in conversation with a few folks in our office. And so just trying to figure out, you know, who do you focus to have those kind of trainings on just making sure folks understand why we're doing things. And like Angie said, keeping students and the staff at top of mind to make sure we're making everyone safe. Inform, educate, report. Love it.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Yeah, we just came up with that. I'm at Alma College. We just came up with that because we had students move in, and there was a game of volleyball going on. And so we immediately, you know, got so many reports for this one event, but nobody had taken the initiative to just inform those students that were gathering. Hey, we see 3 out of 8 of you have a mask on. Okay, the other 5, we're informing you, you have to put a mask on. The reason being is that, yes, we understand maybe you're not at risk, but this is our whole campus community that we're thinking about, and then taking that next step to report if needed, to try and mitigate some reports. So yeah, that is something our vice president came up with right on the spot. She just started saying it and it stuck. So we'll go with
That is awesome. I love that. I feel like probably campuses are moving into a space of trying to adopt, you know, whether it's print stuff, virtual things that can be sent to families and current students, you know, everyone who's involved in that task. But I do find, you know, that these examples of hearing about other institutions and how these things are being handled is very helpful in this space. So that's really wonderful. Okay, let's see here. Yes, holding one another accountable. That's kind of been a thing on our campus, student to student. Yep, in that exact same way. We've had videos even released from students, which have been kind of cool. So yeah, we're all kind of crossing our fingers, hoping the fall works out, because we're gonna be, like Angie said, positive patties, and hope it does.
Well, and you know, we had a meeting yesterday with our team, talking about how this fall was going to look. And is it going to look different? Yes. But the thing about this profession, and I think the thing that's so magical about what we all do, is 90% of this, we all know how to do. It's about building relationships with families and students and high school counselors and college professional admission counselors. And those are things that we have done since it was paper and, you know, like there wasn't Google Maps and you had to just experiment and figure out which way was north and south and east and west. Like, we know how to do this work. And as a profession, we're so great at it. As we continue to shift the way we do it, like I said, if we keep the students and our professionals and the wellness of what we're doing with each other at the heart of what we do, it's going to be amazing. And we don't have to be virtual on every single thing. It is okay to still drop a letter in the mail. And it is okay to pop a postcard into a student to say, hey, I saw your application and I'm so excited that it's here. And it is really fine to still pick up the phone and leave a voicemail, or not leave a voicemail, because let's be honest, like, high school students don't set up their voicemail. So there's that. That lady telling me there's no voicemail set up, she and I are like best friends. But like, those are things that are still okay. And I guess I just put that out there to say, like, a lot of this is going to be trial and error, and a lot of this is going to be an experiment. But the core of what we do is connecting with students and helping them find a place to spend the next 2 years or 4 years. And I think that's the coolest part of what we do.
So I know we are like literally minutes away, and we want to be mindful of everyone's time, because we were just talking about all the 200 things on my list that are never ever feel like they're ever going to get done. They're going to get done in a couple of days. But before we end this, I hope this has been helpful for you all. I hope it has at least jogged
took so many notes,
some ideas, right? So Angie and I will work to figure out how to get these notes. There is, though, it should be a way for all of you right now to save the chat. So if you go open your group chat box and you click on the 3 dots on the right, it'll show you more, and you hit save chat. That should give you access to everything that's in this chat box instantly without having to wait on Angie and I to figure out how to get it to everyone. So I would say go ahead and try that if you're able to do so. Let me know if it works in the chat. Hopefully it does. But that can be a really quick way for you to get these notes. Again, we hope that this was helpful. And let us know too before you leave, what are you excited about for fall? I think we've thought about the fall in kind of like a negative-ish way a little bit, right? Because like life is hard right now. Oh, it worked. Thank you, Car. But we'd love to hear what you're excited about for fall. I think I'm excited to just provide more accessibility. We all know how hard that can be, and this is like the prime time for us to make ourselves even more known to all students. Angie, I don't know, what are you excited about?
Well, first of all, like even just getting to see some of your faces today was so exciting. I mean, I live with 2 little boys and my husband, and like their faces are cute, but I've seen a lot of their faces the last 5 months. So I'm excited to go back into high schools, even if it's virtually, and see some students and see some of my friends that are doing this work all of the time. I think having those connections is so important to what we do. And I don't know, I'm just excited in general. I think it's going to be an awesome year. It's going to be hard. Like it's going to be hard work, but it's going to be good.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hannah says having students back on campus.
Yes.
Of course. Right, just so excited. So we're all gonna be positive. I encourage everyone to stay magical this week. Just try to be magical and maybe do a face mask because that's all that's keeping me.
And Christian and Jen and I clearly don't have all the answers to all of the things. There was something today that you were like, shoot, I would really like to talk more about that. Feel free to message any of us. And if we weren't the person to talk about it, we are happy to like get you in contact with somebody. I think that the coolest part about these luncheon chats is that this does not have to be the end of the conversation. Like, let's keep the dialogue going and make sure that we're all moving forward.
Awesome. So all hearts and minds are clear. We're gonna move on and continue being superheroes for the week. So hopefully everyone stays healthy and happy and positive as you can be.